Captain Marcus Chen had face-down plasma cannons, navigated through asteroid fields during solar storms, and once talked his way out of a Rigelian prison using nothing but card tricks and terrible jokes. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for this moment. The Zephyrian Queen stood before him in her crystalline throne room, her elegant form shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with what he assumed was her heartbeat. Her species was renowned across the galaxy for their beauty, their deadly precision in combat, and their complete inability to understand human humor. "Your terms are acceptable, human," Queen Veltara said, her voice carrying the melodic quality that made Zephyrian diplomats so effective. "We shall provide safe passage through our territory in exchange for your technological specifications on defensive shielding." Marcus nodded, trying to maintain his professional composure despite the fact that he'd been negotiating for the past 6 hours without a break. The coffee substitute they'd offered tasted like liquid metal, and his back ached from the ornate chair that was clearly designed for a different anatomy. "Excellent, Your Majesty. I think this partnership will benefit both our species greatly." He stood, stretching slightly, and couldn't help but notice how the Queen's head tilted curiously at his movement. Everything about her was graceful, from the way her forearms moved in perfect synchronization to how her silver hair seemed to float as if underwater. The exhaustion must have been getting to him, because what came out of his mouth next would later be recorded in galactic history as either the most successful diplomatic blunder or the worst joke ever told. "You know," Marcus said with a tired grin, "with those negotiation skills and that grace under pressure, you'd make a cute wife." The words hung in the air like a photon torpedo in the vacuum of space. The Queen's bioluminescent pattern stopped mid-pulse. Every single one of her court advisors, tall, ethereal beings who had been quietly observing from the shadows, suddenly straightened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees, and Marcus could swear he heard the sound of his own career imploding. He opened his mouth to backtrack, to explain it was just human humor, to possibly grovel for forgiveness when Queen Veltara spoke. "I agree." The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. He blinked, wondering if the translation matrix in his neural implant had malfunctioned. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, could you repeat that?" "I said I agree." The Queen's patterns began pulsing again, but now they were shifting through colors Marcus had never seen before. Deep purples and brilliant golds that seemed to make the very air shimmer. "Your proposal is acceptable." "Proposal?" Marcus's voice cracked like a teenager asking someone to prom. That was just a joke. I mean, not that marrying you would be a joke, you're absolutely stunning, but—" "Captain Chen?" the Queen interrupted, and suddenly she was standing directly in front of him. He hadn't even seen her move. "Are you attempting to withdraw your proposal?" The word proposal hit him like a meteor impact. Around the throne room, he could see the Zephyrian court members beginning to glow with excitement, their patterns synchronizing in what looked suspiciously like celebration. "Your Majesty," one of the advisors stepped forward, practically vibrating with energy. "Shall we begin preparations for the bonding ceremony?" Marcus felt his knees go weak. "Bonding ceremony?" Queen Veltara's large opalescent eyes fixed on his, and he found himself drowning in their depths. "In Zephyrian culture, Captain, when a worthy individual suggests matrimonial union, it is considered a binding social contract. To refuse would bring great dishonor to both parties." "But I'm human," Marcus protested weakly. "Don't you have rules about interspecies marriage?" A sound emerged from the Queen that Marcus realized with growing horror was laughter. "Captain, you clearly know little of Zephyrian history. We are one of the few species in the galaxy that actively encourages genetic and cultural diversity through bonding with other races. It is considered the highest honor." She stepped closer, and Marcus caught a scent like ozone and starflowers. "Besides, your species has proven most fascinating. Your unpredictability, your emotional range, your capacity for both creation and destruction, these are traits we find highly desirable in a mate." "This is insane," Marcus muttered, but he found himself not entirely opposed to the idea. The Queen was beautiful, intelligent, and commanded the respect of one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. There were definitely worse fates. "Captain," the Queen continued, her voice dropping to what could only be described as a purr, "I have observed your species for some time. You face impossible odds with humor. You show compassion to enemies. You sacrifice yourselves for others without hesitation. These are not common traits in the galaxy. She reached out with one delicate hand and touched his cheek. Her skin was warm and seemed to tingle with energy. When you spoke of me as a potential mate, even in jest, you showed no fear, no calculation of political advantage. You simply saw me as, how did you put it, cute? Marcus couldn't help but laugh. Your Majesty, with all due respect, you're probably the most beautiful being I've ever encountered. Cute was a massive understatement brought on by diplomatic exhaustion. The patterns on her skin flashed brilliant white, and Marcus was fairly certain he'd just made her blush. Then you accept the bonding? Marcus looked around the throne room, at the expectant faces of beings who could vaporize his ship with a thought, at the Queen whose eyes held intelligence, humor, and something that looked suspiciously like affection. He thought about his life, a career military man with no family exploring the stars alone. Maybe it was time for a different kind of adventure. Your Majesty, he said, taking her hand in his, I think this is either the best mistake I've ever made or the worst, but... He grinned, feeling the familiar rush of leaping into the unknown. Let's find out together. The Queen's patterns exploded into a cascade of colors that painted the entire throne room in shifting rainbows. Around them, the Zephyrian court began what could only be described as the galaxy's most elegant celebration. Later, when Marcus filed his mission report, he would simply state that diplomatic relations with the Zephyrian Empire had been established with unprecedented success. He left out the part about accidentally proposing to their queen. Some things, he decided, were better explained in person. And that's how Captain Marcus Chen became the first human to marry into alien royalty, proving once again that humanity's greatest superpower wasn't technology or warfare. It was their remarkable ability to stumble into extraordinary situations and somehow make them work.